Hey, it's Drybear. We're continuing our series of covering every weapon in the First Descendant, and today we're going to talk about the ultimate assault rifle, Divine Punishment. And I would say the name is fitting because this weapon is in a very odd spot right now. So I'm going to give you two different builds for the Divine Punishment. If you want to run it as a DPS weapon, here is the build that I would recommend for it. It does scale exceptionally well with sharp precision shot, especially if you run with an increased rounds like expand weapon charge. Super helpful there. It does do decently with mental focus, not quite as good as the machine guns do, but decently. And of course, if you can manage to be accurate with this weapon, you can run real life fighter as well, though it's going to be kind of challenging, especially if the weapon is of a low activation level, which means you haven't run a bunch of duplicates into each other to make it a higher rank. Now, to be honest, I can't really recommend this weapon as a DPS weapon in its current state. If it gets more buffs or gets more adjustments, I think it'd be a really fun weapon to run as a DPS option, but it tops out at about 547,000 simulated DPS here for a DPS build, which is just, it's pitiful. It's not really that great. You can find purple weapons. In some cases, you can even find blue weapons that might even be able to push that instead. So I don't think this weapon is really currently suited best to be a DPS output weapon, but there are some other options for that. But just to be thorough for people that, you know, if you're playing the way you want, I'm a big fan of letting people play whatever they want, however they want. If you like the weapon, it does kind of look and sound like an AK-47 if you want to play that way. This is what I would run for the DPS. It does scale really well with reload. You want to have max rounds for sharp precision shot as well. Elemental enhancement's a good fit here. It does have okay crit damage scaling, so if you want to run better concentration, fire rate up, all of those work really well, and you want to kind of build around that kind of bit. It does have a pretty high fire rate as well. The main challenge with this weapon, functionally, if you're using it for DPS, is going to be it has a very high recoil. That recoil comes with a very high bloom, and it has an accuracy down debuff until you fully upgrade it as well. So looking at the weapon itself, if you look at the unique ability, the default, if you have a level 0 on the unique ability, it will have hip fire accuracy, aim shot accuracy down by 40%. When you fully upgrade this, it goes to 0, which means there will be no negative to accuracy. However, one thing you'll notice about this weapon, more so than most weapons in the game, is that, like I said, it has a very poor accuracy rating, it has a very poor recoil, and has honestly one of the worst blooms I've seen of any weapon in the game. So let's look at what I mean by that. So this is the normal fire. You can see that the accuracy is quite poor. It kind of goes all over the place. The recoil pattern itself isn't too bad. The big problem is the bloom. So accuracy as a stat is the likelihood that your shot will hit exactly at the center of your reticle. Lower percent means it has less chance to hit that. Lower percent starts to spread out the likelihood of that goes, and eventually that goes out, and the accuracy gets, as the probability of hitting the center is lower and lower. Bloom is different. Bloom is kind of like the comparison is like velocity to acceleration. Bloom is the acceleration of your accuracy. It is how much your accuracy changes with continued fire. So as you continue to fire, you can see the bloom for this weapon is really high. It starts to get more and more and more inaccurate over time, more so than almost any other weapon in the game. So it gets very extremely inaccurate the more you shoot, and starts to stack with that. Now, currently, as far as I can tell, the only way to improve bloom is to reduce recoil. It seems like they've tied that stat in with the recoil stat. So this weapon out of the box, especially if you're going to be running things like action and reaction and have aiming, one has a recoil increase to it, the other one has an accuracy down on it, especially if you're going to run real life fighter as well, which also has an accuracy down on it. This weapon becomes a nightmare to hit anything with other than the broadside of a barn. It's not super great for that standpoint, and so you really do benefit from having some accuracy and bonuses. But again, this is the default lowest level Divine Punishment, so you'll be able to react to that. But you can put in things, like you can put in like vibration absorption, and you can put in Hawkeye, you can put in Deadeye as well if you wanted to, just to get a bit even better on top of that. And then the weapon does come pretty good. You can see we actually have a decent accuracy now, like our estimation on the reticle is pretty good. We still have a pretty high bloom, even with the recoil reduction, but you can make it relatively accurate as far as, for an AR, it's very inaccurate, but for a weapon, it's actually not bad as long as you build it that way. So you kind of have to be aware of the strengths and weaknesses of the weapon. But as I mentioned before, if we go back to the sheet over here, it does, even when you run it for full DPS output, it doesn't really scale that well for damage overall. You can run, like I said, you can run Sharp Prison Shot. It does have a good weighting for that. You can run Real Life Fighter, Mental Focus, or Sweeping Squad if you wanted to, with Elemental bonus. But let's talk about an alternate route for this weapon, because there are some other things you could use it for besides just running for damage, because I think you have a lot of better options if you're trying to run a weapon for damage. The unique ability has a lot of really cool utility and synergy that go along with it, right? So it has 3 different buffs. If you buff an ally that isn't like another ally outside of yourself, you will give yourself an up to 35% defense buff, which is pretty good. The only thing that increases here when you level this up is the number of stacks, the max stacks. So you can get up to 7 here, so 35% on the defense bonus, which is pretty good. You can also get a minus 12% on the skill cooldown reduction. This is useful for certain synergies with your character, and this is praised. This is only available when you heal an ally or you apply a shield or MP recovery or custom resources. This is going to get very heavily into Descendant builds. So some Descendants, primarily Jaber and Eugen, which have heals, area heals, buffs, and bonuses, can trigger this. But you can also get some buffs for the meditation. With most Descendants, they can find a way to apply a buff either through an add-on, through a module, or through some kind of combination of their skills. They can get meditation to pop. Then the last one is Glory. This one will give you a stacking firearm attack every time you debuff the enemy. What's cool about this is it counts basically everything for debuff. When you put an elemental status effect on an enemy, that counts. When you use an ability that does some kind of stacking effect, that counts. All of that counts, and you can get these stacks to go really high very quickly, and it'll give you a firearm attack. However, the firearm attack only goes up to 10% at max, even when it's fully activated. Even Albion Cavalry Gun, which is, very low in DPS as well, goes up to 41% firearm attack. So the buff with firearm attack just isn't enough for this to be that strong. So what you could do is you could focus on the defense buff and the skill cooldown buff. And so what I'm going to recommend as an alternate, if you wanted to use another weapon for your DPS output, you could use Divine Punishment as a quick swap option for part of a utilitarian, a support build, or even just as a backup weapon to make your gameplay a little bit more interesting. So a couple things on this right now. I'm going to recommend a support style gameplay for the Divine Punishment that takes advantage of its passive buff and also some of the things that you can transfer over. Unfortunately, right now, all 3 of the buffs that you get with Divine Punishment require you to have Divine Punishment out in order to keep it. If for any reason, if you stack up the Divine Punishment buff, you can shoot it and you can get the buffs. Like if we throw this out, we get the buff. We have Glory active right now. If I swap to a different weapon, we lose it. This is the same for all of the bonuses you get for Divine Punishment. In order to benefit from those buffs, you have to have the Divine Punishment in your hand. However, what you could do is you could take advantage of the defense and skill cooldown. So take out your main primary weapon, deal damage with it. When you have your skills available, use all your skills, and then switch to your Divine Punishment, and you can quickly stack up defense and skill cooldown by getting the stack buffs on it, which allow you to absorb attacks. If you're in the middle of a damage phase from a Colossi or something like that, you can use the extra defense to stay alive, and you use the skill cooldown to reset cooldowns. Additionally, there are a couple other things that you can do that allow you to carry over to other weapons. One of those is going to be Firing Fiesta. So Firing Fiesta is a super fun ability because when you put Firing Fiesta on a weapon, you can actually swap to another weapon and maintain that buff, which means that when you quick swap to your Divine Punishment, I would even run things like the quick swap option here. So like better weapon weight, there's some purples that run this as well, but you can swap over to this, you can shoot, you can reload if I had ammo. So use the buffs that you get from the Divine Punishment, then you can shoot, reload in order to get that back. When it's done, you'll get the buff, and then you can switch over to another weapon and use the responding time of that Firing Fiesta on the new weapon. And what's great is when you run swap speed, you can use this on the outro, allows you to get more uptime on Firing Fiesta for another weapon. And so it becomes your kind of secondary, fanny pack on your hip that allows you to get a free defense buff, a free skill cooldown buff. It gives you another firing ammo consumption, increases the time to empty on another weapon if you wanted to, and that would be the overall build. Then you could run things like Special Forces for movement speed. You can even run status effects. So if you didn't want to run Firing Fiesta, there are some other options you could run as well. Like you could run things like Heat Incinerator or the Remote Generator. So if you wanted to apply status effects with this weapon and get the external component combos that allow you to increase your status effect applications, you could use that and then spread Frostbite, Venom, Burn, all of these effects to all different kinds of enemies. And you can be more of a status effect CC'er. Electrocution counts as an incapacitate. The Frostbite counts as a little mini stun, so you can actually interrupt some animations and things like that with, especially it even works on some elites. So you have some bonuses there, and that will give you more of a holistic approach to the weapon. So I'll leave both of these down below if you want to use either one of them. Again, I wouldn't heavily recommend using the damage version because as of right now, until Divine Punishment gets buffed, it's just not a very good damage option, but it is here if you want to use it. And you know, it's a PvE game, do whatever you want. I'm not your dad, you can play it. So I have both options here depending on which one you want to use. Let me know which weapon we should cover next. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people. And don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.